Hi, everyone. Welcome to an interview with Dr. Denise. How do you say your last name?
Cook.
Dr. Denise Cook. You were just telling me how you're going off on an independent research project
Yes.
because academia is not kind of interested in it, and you're so sure that this is correct and the right way to do things, and you're going to do it at all costs, sort of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, now, yeah. Now my
Awesome.
mind's kind of attached itself to the idea, and it's not letting it go. Like I've spent actually a lot of time. I've been raising 2 kids for the last 4 years,
Right.
and realized how much I need to do this. How much of my identity is actually tied in with these ideas and getting them out there and trying to change the status quo, and how I'm not the prototypical stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I was also saying that I've seen this like several times. We'll get into your history and stuff, but I was seeing this several times in a lot of scientific breakthroughs. I mean, there was one where it's just like challenging the way babies grow. And so like the status quo was that babies grow constantly at a constant rate. And this lady was like, all these mothers are reporting that their babies are going through growth spurts. So how is this adding up? And so she was measuring babies. And just by increasing the resolution of measurements, she was able to prove that it's actually in spurts. Because like they were measuring babies once a week, and based on the once a week, yeah, it's a curve. But when she was measuring the babies like twice a day, there was like a static level, and then a jump, and then a static, and so like, and so she had to do the same thing.
Of the data collection that was giving the wrong results, basically.
Yeah,
that's and even a lot of what I think about is like, how much data out there are people reading into that's not collected at the right resolution, that's not collected in the right way, that's biased in some form, that people already have a preconceived notion. I mean, we all do. We all have a bias, so do I. But, it's...
And just seeing her life and how much resistance she got when she was trying to present actual data to the scientific community, challenging the status quo. So I really want to wish you luck, because I know it's not going to be an easy fight, which you're going to go through.
I think it's a slow process. The idea is just to get the ideas out there, first of all. What usually people say is that you can't go after people with firm beliefs. You have to go after the children. The people that are more malleable. So once the ideas are out there, people can kind of make up their own minds.
Cool. All right. So let's get into your background. How did you get here? What is.
So I'm a neuroscientist by training. I did a PhD in neuroscience at the University of McGill from 2007 to 2012.
Okay.
And like right near the end of there, I hit a burnout point. So something like massive happened in my life. I made a huge mistake. And it was then that I started to like question like how I'd gotten there, why I had made this huge mistake. How am I going to prevent it from happening in the future? And it was actually at that point that I found personality type. So I like hit upon some forums, some groups, and I was like, what are these 4 letters? Like, I don't understand.
Right.
And that led me eventually to like Personality Junkie website, taking the test. So I don't think OPS, Objective Personality System, was out there. It was in its infancy.
Right. Yep.
I know Dave was putting out videos then.
Yeah.
But that's how I saw his stuff was on YouTube then. But Personality Junkie was kind of more evolved. And I took their test, and I was actually tested as an INTJ. And it took a long time to kind of settle on like, no, I'm not an INTJ. I'm an INTP. I'm a big picture thinker. And the reason why was because like I've been so focused on these like small biological problems during my like neuroscience PhD that I wasn't seeing the big picture anymore.
Right.
And that's what like, I was like, oh, well, how can I be a big picture thinker? I don't really see myself as a big picture thinker. But at that point, then I started to see the connections everywhere. Like everything that I knew from neuroscience kind of came together. It linked to the cognitive functions, Jungian cognitive functions. And I started to tie in a lot more at that time. Actually, my brain was kind of in overdrive.
Right.
For a long time, for a couple of years, actually.
So can we dial back a bit and like, what was your thesis connected to this as well, or was it disconnected?
No, it wasn't at all. So I worked on I was working in mice, basically, looking at a protein called Fragile X mental retardation protein, and what it was doing at the basic level, like it's involved in how much protein is being made in the cell, basically.
Okay.
So very, very basic.
Right,
They're
right.
not psychology based at all.
Yeah, it's basic, but you need like a big background to get to that point to
So,
understand.
so before that, my background was in biochemistry.
Okay, cool, awesome. And then so just anyone who's interested, we'll just do the call out now, and we'll do it again at the end. Like anyone who's interested in helping Denise with her project, she's trying to tie typology with genetics. And so what do people need in order? Like there's a website in the description. What do people need to be able to help you out?
So you need your DNA data from either 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, or Ancestry DNA, or any other company that gives you a whole genome sequence. So Nebula Genetics, Dante Labs, and you have to upload that data to a site called Open Humans. And so while it's called Open Humans, the site is actually private. You get to decide who you share your data with. And so you then, by uploading your data to that site, you can then share it with my project, Personality Genie.
Are we back?
We're back.
All right, yeah. Okay, so that's really awesome. So there's no risk of their genome getting accessed by other people if that's what they're worried about.
So that's why I've been doing this through Open Humans. So they're set up to have a very secure website. They know the ethical implications. They're abiding by the privacy laws across the world. So the most stringent, I think, is the one in Europe. And so that the database is there. And then I never have access to people's emails, people's names, or anything. You create a login with them. What it does allow me to do is to contact them through Open Humans. I can contact people through there, but I never have access to your emails unless you email me personally.
Right.
And so their system's set up. And then what happens is when I want to analyze the data, I send it to DNA Nexus, which is a genomics company. And so they're set up with firewalls, whatever, to protect the data in the way that it needs to be protected. So I'm not actually testing it. The analysis gets taken, like it never gets downloaded on anybody's computers. There's no way to identify you. And it gets analyzed basically on a cloud server, on an Amazon server.
Okay, and so then people who are doing this and who are typology enthusiasts are going to be contributing to bringing typology to a more scientific.
That's the hope, yes. And that's what I'm really interested in. And you have to take a couple of personality tests, but there is one at the end that says, what is your best fit type? What have you decided is your best fit? Because I've seen some people are emailing me and they're saying, well, OPS, objective personality systems, type me as this, but your system is typing me as something different. What do I do? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use people's best fit and their confidence in that. So if someone's 80% confident they've been mistyped, I'll be using that data.
Yeah.
So that's a way of kind of getting away, because the accuracy of the tests out there are not very good.
Yeah, but I mean, like you yourself went through a long journey from INTJ, right, to INTP. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So like some people just don't do that. So are you screening for that kind of thing? Like
no,
the confidence level is just the thing?
Screen for that thing. So it's actually designed so that we know that there's like maybe a 50% accuracy.
Okay.
That the type finder, I think the type finder is supposed to be like 60 to 70, maybe 80% accurate based on what they're saying. Same with Dario's, he's also done some background testing on that too. It's more of a journey to find your type, his test.
Okay.
It's got long paragraphs, so maybe nobody reads those. So it's designed so that as long as we get like a 50% accuracy, and as long as people are not being systematically mistyped, it should be okay, right? Yeah. Like as long as not all ENTPs are being typed as ISTPs.
Well, I mean, if that is happening, you're at least still getting some kind of data that's going to show something, like that there is something, I guess, right?
Well, what it's shown so far is that, as we know, there INTPs and INTJs and ENFPs, all the intuitives are taking my test.
Okay, all right.
So there's a big intuitive bias.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem too in the typology community with like newbie typologists or newbie people taking tests. Everyone's an intuitive. No one's typing themselves a sensor. Yeah.
Because the tests, all the tests were designed by intuitives.
And there's like a favoritism bias. There's like what's that called? Like everyone wants to be the magic snowflake. Everyone wants to be the special thing. Yeah. So yeah. but like that aside, have you gotten sort of results so far, positive results, or not
yes,
yet?
I did. Like we've analyzed like a small subset of the data. That I actually ran it from in 2018, and then my genomics provider said we're not doing this anymore. That was after 8 weeks of launching.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So we had to pull all the data out of there, and that was analyzed, and it does look promising. So everything's just a little bit below the statistical cutoffs, but I think with more data, with like at least 1,000 samples, we'd be able to get something.
Like right now, the noise is too high, and you're not really seeing signals.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing is, why couldn't you go, like, you were telling me how this was sparked, basically the status quo is believing one thing and you're seeing something different. So do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so exactly. So when I came to discover Jungian cognitive functions and kind of connected it all up with what I knew, I started to get interested more in decision making and how decisions were made, because that's a lot of what like thinking and feeling functions are for, right? It's like how are we navigating through life? How are we making decisions? And these are the big differences that are seen between people. And you knock into like research where it's like, oh, okay, well, so what it is that we come genetically programmed with needs, right? And the ways to make those, and the ways to figure out how to meet those needs. And that's how it is for all organisms, right? You need food, you need shelter, you need, in our society, we need money. So money buys us food and shelter. So how are we going to make that? But there's also what Maslow, what's his first name?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, the hierarchy of needs, right? There's also psychological needs. So an INTP might need to be immersed in ideas and new ideas and connected to like a bigger idea that they think has value in the greater world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I found with that is that people aren't really looking at the brain as something that is helping us meet our needs. They're thinking more in terms of intelligence. But what is intelligence? Like, so they think we're more intelligent than animals, but are we? Animals are able to meet their needs, right? They've survived. Some animals have survived longer than we have on this earth, right?
Okay.
So if we look at what the brain is actually doing and how it's making decisions from a place of needs. And that's what the feeling function is for. And so thinkers, they know how to maybe think their way and logic their way and like work hard and get things done, but they might not be doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where the integration comes in. Like, what is that idea that you want to be spending your effort and your energy on? And is it worth it to you?
Right. So I'm also wondering how much of that, like you're bringing in the animal kingdom here. So I'm wondering how much of that is that we're social creatures. So maybe we have a more differentiated cognition because we're working together. So we have people that are in charge of the feelings, people that are in charge of the thinkings.
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly what it relates to. Going back in evolution, there's a specialization. Right. Like you can't be attending to all the stimuli all the time. Your decision making is going to be confused.
Or or even optimally as humans can optimize that. So like ants have the worker ants, and like species are optimizing for things.
You can see it everywhere, and like even
but like a solitary creature might not have that split, right?
No, there's definitely something with social species, and we want to differentiate ourselves from others because we want to have value. So that's also seen when there's increased competition, you get an increased differentiation in what people are doing.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of it is like, well, look, we come, but people don't really want to hear this, that there's a role for them that they're supposed to fulfill. Like there's a destiny. It's kind of counter to what people want to believe. They want to believe in free will and choice, and of course you do have that, but I
mean, it doesn't contradict. It doesn't necessarily.
It doesn't contradict. But what I've found is that actually your emotions are telling you. So like if you're not getting internally rewarded, which the internal reward is you meeting your needs, then you're going to be depressed. And so what is depression? Is it really, so even young, and there's Catherine Benzinger, she did a lot of research on falsification of type. So people that are not actually behaving based on their type get depressed, fatigued, stressed. There's like a whole bunch of like cognitive changes in their brain that's based on cortisol levels increasing. that actually make you, right, that stress you out and make you, and that's basically saying that your personality is not a good match to your environment, that you're not doing the right kind of things.
Yeah. So then you were saying that you were seeing a lot of connections with current neuroscience and current theory in neuroscience and Jung, and that's like a faux pas. Like you can't do that in the academic world. But like,
no. Well, what you can't do is talk about Jung in the academic world.
Okay. But you can't
like,
talk about the cognitive functions.
You bring up the MBTI and you're shunned. It's like, well,
right.
So I tried that at the beginning. I tried reaching out to people at the universities here. I said, like, look, I have this project that I want to work on. I'm interested in looking at the genetics of personality type. You're looking at, I think it was people looking at which genes are associated with personality. And I said, look, this could be a good match. And nobody answers you.
Yeah.
Right. And then you try on social media as well. And you try, I'm getting some traction, but it's slow. Yeah. And also that's not the point. The point is, like, I have to do the work. I have to actually write the papers, write the books, get these ideas out there.
But a huge part of it,
it's not about going directly to the source of the ideas. You can't change people's minds that way.
But a huge part of it is people like that are watching this that can contribute and getting them, because you need data.
Definitely. So that's the biggest, even yes, because I mean, part of this was originally I was like, oh, I'll make a DNA-based company. But at the end of the day, knowing your type is only a little bit of what it is, right? You can learn your type through a survey. You can learn your type through self-discovery, etc. But like, and DNA can give that to you, and it might be more accurate than every other way. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make a company. The company is the pamphlet, the training, the team building. That's the consulting company. And for me, I've realized that's not for me. So
it sounds like you're more interested in just getting to the bottom of things rather than
exactly. So I realized that this is going to be my last year on the project gathering data. So I hope to complete my sample this year, to get it analyzed in the next few years and get that out if there's anything. But my main focus is now going to be on like writing and researching and getting to the bottom exactly of these ideas.
So I don't know if you know a little bit about Dave's view, the founder of OPS, on this topic, because he's really
genetic component. So from what I've read, and I believe it, that there's correlations between type and like body, like how you look and how you express yourself, like your facial expressions, and some other stuff I know, but I believe it.
Yeah.
I don't know how strong the links are, but what's probably likely happening is that the genes for personality and the genes for like, facial features, morphology, I guess, are kind of linked on the same chromosomes.
Phenotype, yeah.
Phenotype.
Oh, here, someone even said it here. Yeah, phenotype. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that is like a coincidence in their book. But I just know every time he has a chance to speak on it, he's convinced like 150%. I know that's not an option, 100%. He's completely convinced that genetics and typology are linked, even if they don't look the same, even if the phenotype is different. That your type is in you at birth. Yeah. And so not everyone believes this.
I'm convinced of that as well.
Right. Not everyone in the community believes this. Not people criticize him for it.
No, I think there's still not a lack of consensus there. I think Jung believed it, and I believe it through basically emotions. Like basically, like the emotions are telling you which direction to go. If you're going in the wrong direction, you're going to be depressed. If you're going in the right direction, you're going to be happy with yourself. You're going to have more self-love. You're going to have more confidence. Like you need to kind of play to your strengths.
So I think like he's coming at it from an angle of just looking at twins and people born in the same situation and just going in two separate paths, and the only differentiator is type. There's nothing else. People are looking at the same situation, and one person is traumatized, the other one isn't. Why? One person is depressed, the other one isn't. Why? Right? And so like I think that's where I don't know. He's just overly convinced, and it's sort of triggering a lot of people that he's so convinced on it.
He typed a lot of twins. I haven't really done very much data on like identical twins and their typing.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's even one. I didn't interview his twin, but I interviewed him, and he said that like also, yeah, there's a correlation there with his twin.
There's the same kind of, the brain is kind of working the same way, even though their interests might be different, right?
Right. Yeah.
Look at the same situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they found, like in academic science on twins, they found that a lot of these psychological traits are actually heritable, meaning that they're passed from, they're due to nature, they would say. So they're passed on in the genes, not to nurture, which would be like the upbringing. And so the dogma there is actually that there's almost no influence of upbringing on your personality traits.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. And then I was also looking at other literature. I don't know. Do you want to share with us some literature that's kind of supporting this as well? Are you able to? Do you have that prepared?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I mean, I've connected it up to basically everything.
Do you have do you have a blog or something?
I have a Substack. Is that what it's called? Personality Genie Substack.com or something. But there's only I only just started that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so what really interested me was this. There's a whole bunch of literature on like how. So what it's called neuromodulation, but it's basically hormones. How hormones in the brain influence how circuits behave. So. And where most of the research is done is actually in lobsters and mollusks and stuff like slugs and things.
Okay.
So what they found there is if they have a fixed circuit, so like a fixed brainstem circuit that's able to give out a few different patterns, and the different patterns are actually they're actually modulated by the hormones that you place on top of them. So that to me, like I've kind of made the extra step to say like, oh, this neuromodulation soup, this hormone soup is actually what we're calling emotion. And it's flipping the brain circuit. And if we look at cognitive functions and we look at the tension between the dominant and the inferior, it looks like when we're in an overly excited or aroused state, like if we're stressed, we kind of tend to default to our inferior function. The same thing kind of happens if you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or you're in love. And it's kind of showing me that they're not the dominant and the inferior are actually connected to one another. You can actually flip back and forth based on your like hormonal milieu at the time. Okay.
So like extreme emotional states can switch you between those functions is what you're trying to imply?
So I don't know if you've read any of Naomi Quank's work. So she has like the books on the being in the grip.
Okay.
And how people can be in the grip for short time or long time. So that's kind of like acute stress versus long-term stress.
Right.
And so that's basically your dark side of your personality, the side that you kind of deny for the longest time because you're like, oh, well, someone made me angry at that point, and that wasn't me, right?
That wasn't me, yeah.
In a way that I wouldn't normally behave. But that's actually your inferior function, which is your weaker function coming out.
Yeah. So Jung would call that the shadow,
so
the part of yourself that you deny. Yeah. Part of the shadow, at least.
Shadow, exactly. The inferior, and it's connected to like the opposite functions. Those are the functions that you're very weak in, and that kind of, if you haven't integrated them, they give you you kind of project those onto others, right? You see them and they make you feel bad because you're not good at those functions.
Right. You're because you're saying that's not me. You're blaming others for that being in you. Yeah.
So I kind of see it as like there's a circuit in the brain. It's a fixed circuit, but it modifies based on your emotional state.
Okay. So that's cool. Are there more?
That's kind of very basic, I guess.
Yeah. Is there more stuff that you want to share with us? And
sure. So there's other stuff there, I guess. So so I guess you can say like, what is this falsification of type? Like why are people depressed, and what are they internalizing, right? And so as a social species, like you said, like we're very dependent on one another. That's part of our basic needs, is to belong to a group and to be accepted and stuff. And so a lot of what is I think like from when you're a teenager to when you're in your 30s, like through your 20s, everything's kind of driven by being part of a group.
Right.
You're kind of internalizing these messages like, oh, you need to vie for status. You need to, like, you might not be conscious of it, but we're achieving things and we're trying to reach goals and maximize ourselves, be really productive. And that's kind of acting against, perhaps some people it would be themselves, but for me it was basically against myself. There was a lot of red flags, like, oh, in academia a lot of what is valued is the number of papers that you're publishing, and so that gives rise to these weird incentives that people are just publishing like minuscule research, like a small bit of progress in each paper, or they're dividing up their research into like many different small papers. And for me, the goal was always to do good science.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that was kind of conflicting, right? And so these are the messages you internalize and that kind of lead you to, you're like, well, I want to behave in this way, but like this, my surrounding people are telling me I need to do this, right? And so so what I see there is like the internalization of culture. And we're kind of built for that. And so there's a system like in the prefrontal cortex, you can actually inhibit your basic emotional responses, what you want to do in deference to the group. And that's because you want to survive, right? Like that makes sense probably when you don't know yourself very well.
Yeah.
And so the idea with integration and individuation, like based on Jungian stuff, is to kind of separate what's you from what you've learned over time from your parents and from your environment, right? What are those memes that you've taken in that have influenced your behavior?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you touched on something that's also kind of triggering for me in the academic world, where it's like none of the monumental discoveries are made because you're doing little tiny papers to keep everyone happy and to keep your tenure and to do it's all
you
done.
Actually have to go what I really so when
it's all done because of your work like yours, what you're doing now. Like this is the kind of thing that changes science.
When I started grad school, exactly, it's all about the experiments. It's like, but I was like, but why aren't we reading? Like, why aren't we going back and seeing like what the greats have done? So I was actually reading all the Nobel lectures.
Right.
Trying to say, I was like, oh, look, these are fundamental experiments. Like, look at the way they thought about these problems and they designed it. Like, they didn't just, crawl out of bed one day and come up with like 10 different ideas for their grad students to do, right? Right. It's actually very thoughtful and very thought out. And that kind of science is what gets Nobel Prizes, and the rest is just the wheels are turning, right?
Yeah. I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think there is like a happy balance between the two, between the quality and the quantity, because like you do discover things by accident by the sheer quantity of things. Yeah. Like that is important.
And what it is that there's also going to be a convergence. Like what I'm seeing is like, well, I have my idea, but actually, and I came up with it, like 8 years ago. And actually in the 8 years since, there's been like a lot of progress on like kind of, it's actually converging. So like we're starting to say like, oh, well, the data is not really matching. What do we mean by personality? What do we mean by the big five? Like, what do we mean by these traits can't be changed? Like, is personality static or is it fluid? There are people working in that space.
Right.
It's just that in 1920, Jung had it figured out and nobody listened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Do you feel like maybe you're going too far with the personality type? Like maybe just one of the binary coins, maybe just like, I don't know, feeler versus thinker is enough, or an axis like FITE axis versus TIFE axis, or things like this.
Right. Yeah. Well, they can all be divided up. Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the easiest way, is to try and find it where the most logical division would be between people, and then to look at it that way, not to actually look at each type as separate buckets, right? And try and find the correlations there. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but at least in the genome-wide association analysis that I'm doing, it is binary.
Right. Because like if you're devoting all your attention to make sure, okay, let's make sure we get them the right axis. Let's make sure we get the TIFE axis or the opposite axis. So then your accuracy of the data is a little bit higher because you're investing more time there, rather than dividing the accuracy into like 16 buckets.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know if people like see themselves as like as one function, right? Like they're kind of all, they're different where they're located in the personality. So like
Right.
TI and like a TI DOM is different than like a TI tertiary and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Also, where do you analyze? You
yeah.
don't know what would be fundamentally genetic and whatnot. Yeah. Cool. Really cool. Is there so you're planning on doing this year? So when can we, the public, where can we get updates on your project?
By signing up, you get updates. So you're going to you're going to have a dashboard that you can return to with like a personal ID number. And there you'll get updates. And I can also send an email through the Open Humans system. So it comes to your Open Humans mailbox, I guess,
awesome.
with any updates and stuff.
Yeah, we have a question. What is your self-type, I guess?
INTP.
INTP. Okay, awesome. And is there anything else that we need to tell people to help to get them on board?
Just get excited, get on board. Like
yeah.
This I'm hoping is the change that we need to kind of get these ideas out there. I mean, we really need to influence, and I think it's coming up. I think a lot of younger people are into type. I don't know if that's what you've seen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of younger people on Twitter that are leading blogs and YouTube videos, and they're making courses and stuff for type. And I think it's really kind of an idea that's getting into the consciousness and getting these people into research positions, right? Like this is going to be the future. It's going to try and like reboot this type of thinking. And it is, I mean, it's just that science is so slow. That's what it is.
Yeah.
To change the status quo is just it. Like I think even Darwin's ideas, it took 50, 60 years for it to be accepted in
still.
Yeah. At least in science, it's kind of there is now new stuff that's trying to say like that he didn't have it all right, but
of course he didn't have it all right.
Yeah, exactly. But still.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And so then where are we expecting, like, do you have plans for what's going to happen once you get the data? And like, let's say you have conclusive data, how are you going to rock science with this?
Yeah. That's the part I haven't figured out. That's the key part. Is not really knowing, like not being able to see into the future and what we actually want to do. What I do, it's really hard because there are ethical issues that I'm very aware of, is that like, if you can type people based on DNA, then can you select people? Can you select embryos based on that type, right?
Yeah.
And these type of techniques are not science fiction. There is actually ways to like edit, not human embryos. Yeah, I mean, they're maybe in China, but you know, that is happening in mice and everything, is that you can edit genomes and you can self-select embryos from in vitro fertilization as well. So could people, like in a dystopian future, could people select the types of their children?
Yeah. So, and I mean, even further though, like we can actually understand parts of the genetic code better from this as well, because a lot of the genetic code, we have no idea what it does. And if we're like, oh, this is actually causing type, this is an important part of the genetic code, right?
Right. Well, that's what I mean, what's happened right now is that there were candidate gene studies to link specific genes to personality, and those have all been debunked. So nobody believes those. Like the effects were very small. It was small samples.
Right.
What happened with the genome-wide association studies on personality is that they found they believe everything's polygenic. So there's lots and lots of genes that influence just a little part of who you are. So there could be like thousands of genes that are involved in conscientiousness, for instance.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're kind of coming up with new tools called polygenetic risk scores to kind of use the entire genome to predict your conscientiousness or your agreeableness. But what I see there, and where I see the problem, and where Jung's typology actually falls in, is that when you're looking at something like conscientiousness, you're actually looking across the types. Like you're looking at this bell curve, but like, what is conscientiousness? Is it related to introverted thinking, right? But like, I'm an introverted thinker, maybe dominant, but how does that look in a tertiary? Like you're kind of, it's, I feel like it's just not the right way to look at it. Like if we were looking at personality in the right way, we'd actually be getting better data.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's the underlying part. Like I actually think that, I mean, this sounds crazy to the academic people, and they've told me this, is that it's actually not, there can't be that many genes that underlie introverted thinking, or like each function or each pair of functions, or how it works. I don't know if it's like the functional pair or the extroverted versus the introverted. It can't be made up of many genes, because when that's passed on from parents to their children, that would all get divided up. So if many genes like throughout the genome were involved in introverted thinking, that introverted thinking would disappear. So it really has to be only a few genes, and they have to be all on the same part of the chromosome that gets passed on the next generation. They all have to be close together.
I mean, just to say what Dave is saying about how this problem gets laid out, like from what I've heard from him, is that there is no introverted thinking in the genome. There are a few genes that produce introverted thinking. So are you looking for, is your need more on significance? That's introverted thinking. Is your need more on thinking? And so if you have significance and thinking together, that's where the introverted thinking pops out.
Okay.
So it's like, so I think
he's kind of divided it up. Yeah, I mean,
in between the two.
We're on the same page. Like there has to be very few genes, and they have to be able to be transmitted together. So they have to be close together on the chromosome. And what it is that they're probably also close together to different phenotypes, like to different physical features.
Wow.
Effie, like there's an Effie smile, right?
Right.
So Effie gives rise to a certain set of behaviors, but it also gives rise to a certain set of facial expressions.
Right. So it could be one gene that's involved in many different things, such as phenotype and personality. And
it could be one gene, or it could be like a set of genes that are close together on the genome, and they're inherited together. Basically, they don't get split up during what it's called is recombination. So when the gamete is made, when the egg or the sperm is made, there's this process of recombination where genes get shuffled. And so the closer together on the genome that they are, the less likely they are to be shuffled.
Right. Awesome.
So I think I think for it to work, there must be only a few genes.
Right. And we started talking a bit about implications too. So there's other implications where it's like, okay, if you would want to protect your genome even more if you didn't want people to have access to your personality type.
Right.
Because then that would tell them how to market towards you, or that would tell the police how to interrogate you, or that would give, but at the same time, it'd be like, okay, that would tell teachers how to teach you and to help you grow and progress.
Yeah. So that's the balance that I'm facing right now. I think there's a lot more benefit to it than there are risks, right? Those risks of manipulation and advertising. I mean, advertising, what it is, they do that anyway. They do that
anyway with AI. Yeah.
They're targeting you. They're targeting you by personality anyway. But I think exactly, like, I don't think I want it to be like a hiring tool or something to like box people in, but more like a self-discovery tool, and more like, can this save people from having to go through the multiple different steps into finding their type, and also mistypes, like how negative is that someone's mistyped and believes that they're that type, tries to like modify their like lifestyle based on that type, and is not really
the growth path.
Exactly.
The wrong growth path. Then also it can allow us to listen to each other better, like to see what people are actually saying.
Well, and then if you say that, you're like, okay, well, like, you know, it's not enough that we're speaking out and we're saying like, this is true. Like the scientific world is not listening. Right. But this is like a big missing piece. Like why do people, you know, see the same thing, or exactly. They see the same thing, but they interpret it differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Or like, why do people conclude one thing and others conclude a different thing? So.
And then another thing I was seeing, a lot of the psychology papers are looking at typology aspects. Like you said, you saw the interview I did with the guy on Boredom.
Right. James Dankert.
James. Right. So a lot of what he's talking about as well is just disconnected from typology, but he's talking about typology in essence.
I mean, I'm on Twitter with him, and I'm sometimes kind of like leading him into that.
Right.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that like boredom is definitely associated. Like, I mean, how many different types need to feed their brains with ideas all the time in order to like feel stimulated, right? Like, I don't feel stimulated by, you know, going outside and doing some like zip lining. Like, I've never done that.
Right.
Like that's not my emotional experience. My emotional experience is really in the world of ideas.
Yeah. So I see it also as like a very narrowing down sort of thing where it can connect a lot of disparate, is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Disparate schools of psychology all together.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And a lot of it's like leading into like even in the big 5 type personality stuff, there's papers that come out with like, oh, look, we can actually make individual types. Like there's people that are, you know, the correlation between conscientiousness and agreeableness is high. So maybe that's one type and that type. So it kind of is all kind of converging, but nobody really knows what the missing link is, like the way I see it.
Right.
Like exactly boredom or happiness. Like I've linked it to happiness and burnout and mental health and spirituality and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's like the one ring to rule them all sort of analogy.
The one ring.
The one theory, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. One ring is like I have this this big map and on my computer screen of like, well, everything I've mapped out is like young is in the middle, and then there's like mood and emotion and decision making and social conditioning and evolution and everything. Like kind of it's powerful because it's like it's all of science kind of converging in. And there was this one, not this, I mean, he wrote lots and lots of books, right? And he's actually made more discoveries beyond type, right? That are, I mean, that are not that are influential in some circles, but that are actually, he actually explained almost all of psychology, and people went the experimental route, and none of it's true, right? Like that's what's happening now is there's a replication crisis in psychology and social psychology, and all of the studies they're just all like nobody's able to replicate them. All the discoveries were false.
So I come from more of a physics background, and I was in contact with someone who's interested in psychology and physics because his problem in physics is that people are giving different theories and seeing physics differently. Like there's different schools of quantum physics and things like this. And he's saying like, I'm seeing a correlation between type and what school they pick. It's like, and he said, and so he's trying to think like, what is could sorting out typology actually solve physics because we're interpreting the universe differently based on our type as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's amazing. Like exactly what you brought up at the beginning too. Like I think that emotions give rise to thoughts, but that's my view. Is that really like how it is for everyone? Like I'm trying to find the basic principle. I'm trying to talk to everyone with different types. But like how are other people interpreting the data that they're getting in their brain? And that's why there's different philosophies as well.
That goes into self-awareness too as well. But it's like it could be a feedback loop, like emotions give rise to thoughts, give rise to emotions, give rise
definitely a feedback loop.
Yeah. Cool. No, well, awesome. I really appreciate you coming out and sharing your research with us. And I really encourage everybody who's seeing this to get involved, spread the message, spread the website. And hopefully make this more scientific and accessible to everybody.
Definitely. Thank you.
It can bring a lot of good to the world, like you said, more so than the negative side, I think.
I think so. I think we can protect the downside risk in some ways.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.